All right, chapter 13 is the first of three lending chapters on mortgages. So here, let's get started. Chapter 13. Um, in this chapter, we're going to describe the provisions of a note and a mortgage and learn about trust deeds. We're going to explain various methods of satisfying or transferring a mortgage, including the process of foreclosure and what that is. So, there are two parts to a mortgage, the mortgage itself and a note. The mortgage is the um, promissory is the promise to pay, and the note is the financing instrument, which lays out all the terms of your borrowing. All right, it lays out the uh, what the term is, how many years, how many payments, what the monthly payment is, how much total you borrowed, what the interest rate is, all of that stuff. It is the note that makes you personally liable for the full amount you borrowed. So even in the event of foreclosure, if the lender forecloses, gets the property back, sells it at that was pledged as security for the loan, they sell it at auction, and if those funds are not enough to pay back because maybe property values dropped, it is the note that makes the borrower personally liable for the full amount owed. Okay. So the mortgage itself is the promissory instrument. It is a promise to pay. It's the one that says, hey, lender, if I don't pay you back according to the terms that we agreed to in the note, you can take me to court to foreclose on me to get possession of the property and then sell it at auction and use the proceeds to pay back the debt. But once again, now, if that's not enough to pay back the debt, it is the note that holds that borrower personally liable for the full amount owed. Okay? So there's two parts to the mortgage, the note and the mortgage itself. The note is the financing instrument. You need to know this. And the mortgage is the promise to pay. All right, so we could also highlight it here. So my my notes here on this slide give you an explanation of what each one of these things do and what they are if you want to snap a picture of it. And the next one is where the stuff we'll highlight. So if you want to snap a picture of this, I'll leave this here for a second. If anybody wants to get this slide. All right. And then here is where we can highlight the notes on page 257 and 258 about the note and the mortgage itself. And then down at the bottom, we got this term hypothecation. Hypothecation sounds like an upper crusty word. Hypothecation. Well, hypothecation is the pledging of property as security for a loan without actually giving up that property. A mortgage is an example of hypothecation. You're pledging the real estate as security for the loan, but you're not giving up that property. It's kind of the opposite of how pawn shops work. A pawn shop, if you need money and you got something of value, you take that thing of value to the pawn shop, they estimate the value of it, and then they'll loan you a percentage of the value of it. But you got to leave the item with them. So when you pay back, when you come back to pay back what you borrowed, they give you your item back. If you don't come back by a certain deadline, they keep your item and they sell it and they keep the difference, the profit. That's how pawn shops work. They hold on to the security for the loan. Over here, hypothecation, you're just pledging the property as security for the loan, but you're not giving it up. You're living in it, right? If it's a house, right? All right. So everybody got those notes? Okay. So the mortgagor is the borrower. And the mortgagee is the lender. Hypothecation is the pledging of property as security for the loan without actually surrendering that property because you're living in it. This is just giving you once again the example. Unlike a pawn shop where you give them that property to hold on to, you're just pledging it as security for the loan. Okay. Hypothecation you'll probably get on exams, but not. You don't need to necessarily know what it is. It's probably going to be. You'll see it on exams probably as a wrong exam answer option for a question. They're probably not going to ask you any questions about hypothecation. All right, now New Jersey's a judicial foreclosure state, so we don't have trust deeds. We don't use them here. Trust deeds or deeds of trust, they convey real estate as security for the loan. The trustee is a neutral third party that holds on to the deed. And so if you default and you're not paying back the loan, that neutral third party just gives the lender the deed. It doesn't have to go through the whole judicial foreclosure process. So foreclosure is a lot smoother. Some states have judicial foreclosure. Some states have non-judicial foreclosure. New Jersey, we have the judicial foreclosure. So it takes longer. It's a bigger process, more expensive to go through foreclosure. So foreclosure using a trustee and a trust deed is a lot easier process, which can be done swiftly without going through the court system. But once again, New Jersey, we don't have them. We don't use them. So a note, we use them in New Jersey. What's a note? It's the financing instrument, lays out all the terms of the borrowing. In states that have trust deeds, they also use bonds, trust deeds and bonds. A bond does the same thing as a note, okay? But they go with trust deeds. New Jersey, we don't use bonds, we use notes. So it's the same thing as a bond. New Jersey uses notes, not bonds. It's the same. It is a financing instrument. It lays out all the terms of the borrowing. It's executed by the borrower at closing, shows the amount of debt borrowed, the time and method of repayment, the term, the rate of interest, the monthly payment amount, and it's signed by all parties involved. It's what makes the borrower personally liable for the full amount owed, even in the event of foreclosure. So if they foreclose, sell the property at auction, not enough proceeds to pay back the debt, the lender can still chase after you for the outstanding balance because of your note where you said, I promise to pay you back if you lend me this money. Okay, so if you don't pay them back all that money and they can't recoup it through the sale of the property at auction, they can still chase after you for that deficiency where you are deficient in paying them back. Make sense? So provisions of the mortgage document. It's executed by the owner, the borrower of the property. The legal description identifies the property that's pledged as security for that debt. It identifies the lender and the borrower. It should be signed by all parties, and it identifies the obligations of the borrower and the rights of the lender. Default or breach of contract is when somebody does not do what they were contractually obligated to do, right? When it comes to the loan, to borrowing for lending, what are the obligations, the duties of the mortgagor? Who is the mortgagor? Well, we know you got to pay back the loan according to the terms in the note that you agreed to. You have to pay all the real estate taxes. See, by the way, if you don't do any of these things, technically you're in default and they could foreclose on you. So you don't pay back the loan according to the terms, they could foreclose. You got to pay all the real estate taxes because if you don't, the municipality can have that tax sale and it could wipe out the lender's interest if they're not on top of it. So that could put their collateral at risk. So if you're not paying your taxes, they could foreclose on you if they find out about that. Maintain the property insurance. Yeah, because if the property gets flooded or burns down, their collateral goes up in smoke, right? They want you to make sure that you can't close on a loan unless you prove to the lender that you've gotten a homeowner's insurance policy to protect the lender in case the house burns down or something. That's their security for the loan, remember. You must obtain the lender's permission before doing any major renovations on your house. Ooh, do you guys know that? That if you don't get the lender's permission before you do any renovations, technically you're in default and they could foreclose on you? Now, lenders will typically give the borrowers 30 days to cure any defaults. So, if they do find out you're doing renovations, they give you 30 days to finish them up, you know. Otherwise, they'll could go through with the foreclosure. Why does the lender want you to get their permission first before you start any renovations, any major renovations on the house? Otherwise, you're in default and they could foreclose on you. Why do you suppose that is the case? Anybody got an idea? Let's look at remodeling, a popular remodeling thing. Remodeling the kitchen. What's the first step in remodeling the kitchen other than getting a building permit? What's the first step? Come on, you guys watch Fix This and Flip That shows. What's the first step that everybody gets so excited about on those shows? Really? Demo day, demolition. You get to break stuff. You got to rip everything out that's there, right? So the first step in doing a renovation is to gut the kitchen, what's there. Before you can start putting new stuff, you got to rip out the old. All right, so now you started that job, you ripped everything out, and you lost your job, you got laid off. Shoot. Now what? Is your priority finishing the kitchen, or is it how am I going to feed the kids? How am I going to make the next mortgage payment so I don't lose the house? Or is it uh, finishing that kitchen? And the longer you're unemployed, pretty soon now you're going to start missing mortgage payments. And if the lender needs to foreclose on you, what are they getting? They're getting a house without a kitchen. Can you buy a house without a kitchen with most loans? No, you
No,
cannot.
no.
You need to buy either cash or with a construction loan. And what does it do to the value of a property if it doesn't have a kitchen?
It brings it down.
It brings down the value. So you just devalued the collateral for the loan. So this is why the lender wants you to first obtain their permission before doing any major renovations. They want to see what your plans are, who's doing the work, and do you have the money to finish the project that you're planning on starting? You know. All right. You have to maintain the property. Uh, keep up with it. Don't let it start crumbling and falling apart. Securing permission before adding second mortgages within 30 days because the first lender wants to have that first lien holder position so that in the event of foreclosure they get the number one position, they get paid back first because they're the bigger loan. um, so they don't want you recording any second liens until they have at least 30 days to record their interest. So let's highlight these things on page 259. Provisions for default. Right next to that, first step in foreclosure. The lender will enact the acceleration clause which assists the lender in foreclosure. Now, even before that, a lis pendens is recorded in the public records. Once you fall behind a couple of months on your mortgage payments, 2, 3 months on your mortgage payments, your lender will record a lis pendens in the public record, putting the world on notice. Possible future legal action may be pending. And what possible future legal action may that be? Foreclosure. right? And so the lender is going to be making collection calls to that borrower. Can you make a payment today? You're late on your payment. Can you make a payment? Can you make a partial payment? They're going to try to get anything they can out of you. But there will be a point where those calls will stop. And when they stop, even if you call the lender to make a payment, they won't accept it from you. Why not? Because if they do, it creates an implied contract that there may have some sort of an agreement in place with you to get caught up on your payments. And so the that could screw up their foreclosure process in court. Because if they started the foreclosure process and they accept any partial payments from you, even the borrower can be like, well, I thought that they were going to let me get caught up. I made a payment to them. That creates that implied contract we spoke about. All right, defeasance clause sounds like defeated. The defeasance clause sounds like defeated. The defeasance clause ensures that when a debt is repaid, the lender, the mortgagee, has no further claim on the property. So this requires the lender to add another document to the public records called a satisfaction of lien or a satisfaction of mortgage. Because once you pay off your loan, the mortgage loan creates a lien on your property. When you pay it off, they don't remove the lien. Anytime a document's added to the public record, it's there forever. They just add another document. So that document would be a satisfaction of mortgage. So now anybody searching the history of this property can see, oh, they took out a mortgage on the property. They took out a mortgage loan that created a lien on the property. Oh, here, that lien was paid off. It was satisfied. There was a satisfaction of mortgage lien that was recorded. So this way you could trace back the full history. That's why they don't remove documents from the public records. They just add more. Now, an estoppel certificate, usually when you get a loan to buy a house, the way banking works is the lender already has an investor lined up that they're going to sell that loan to. Okay. And you're usually going to get notified in a month or two that, hey, they sold your loan and you're now going to be making your mortgage payments to a different place. Unless that investor's still going to continue paying your original lender to do the collection and render accounting to them, collections of the monthly payments and render accounting to them. So an estoppel certificate is a document that verifies the amount that remains to be repaid, the interest rate, what that monthly payment is, all that stuff. They're going to want the borrower who took out that loan to sign an estoppel certificate to verify all that information. Now, who is they? They is the investor who's buying the loan. They want to confirm what it is that they are buying with the consumer whose loan it is. They're going to want them to sign this estoppel certificate. Now, it may not say estoppel certificate on it. It could just be like your monthly mortgage payment bill, but it has all that stuff on there, and they're going to want you to just confirm that all of that information is correct. That's what an estoppel certificate does. And that investor that's buying the loan is also going to want the lender to sign something like an estoppel certificate to verify that same information. Except lenders do not sign estoppel certificates. They provide what's called a reduction certificate. It does the same thing as an estoppel certificate, but it's signed by the lender. Okay. The reduction certificates are also used for when you're trying to get payoff information to pay off the loan, when refinancing and selling a property. You may need to get that, where the lender verifies all the terms of the loan. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, So if you have a lien on the property, does that diminish the price on its own, or is it just it's really like on the person's end?
No, any lien beyond your loan that was used to buy the house. Yeah, that could affect the value, especially if you're not going to pay it off. You had a contractor, you had him do work on the house and you never paid him, puts a lien on the property. You got into an accident with somebody, they got a lawsuit judgment against you. They found out you own a house, they put a lien on your house. Um, can that affect the value? Yeah, if you don't pay it off. All right. Would I want to buy your house if it has liens on it? No, I'm going to want you to clear them up first. But what if you're like, screw that, I'm not clearing them up on principle, I'm not paying that guy back. Well, would you buy a property where somebody has a lien that they're not going to pay back? I wouldn't. Not unless you get the property for the juice got to be worth the squeeze. You got to get the property for a low enough price to make up for the difference of paying off that lien. Because liens do not attach to property owners. Liens attach to properties, not to property owners. So if you don't pay it off and I'm buying your property, I'm buying your property with additional debt attached to it. So why would I want to do that unless I get the property cheaper to make up for that? You know, Make sense?
Yes.
All right. So for exams, you need to know what the acceleration clause is, the lis pendens, the defeasance clause, and an estoppel certificate. All of those you need to know for exam. Everybody get the notes there, or is anybody still writing? Okay.
All good.
So here's another slide where I just typed the same things up. The acceleration clause is the first step in foreclosure. It assists the lender in a foreclosure, allowing them to accelerate the terms of repayment of the debt, demanding the entire debt is due and owing immediately. It must be paid now. Prior to enacting the acceleration clause, the lender would file a lis pendens in the public record when you fall behind on your mortgage payments. The defeasance clause sounds like defeated, defeasance, defeated. When you've defeated that loan, when you've paid off that baby, the lender has no further claim on the property. The mortgagee, the lender, they have no further claim on the property. So they have to go back and file a satisfaction of lien in the public records to show the world that you no longer have a debt that you need to repay. The estoppel certificates when the lender sells your loan and that purchaser that of your loan, that investor, which is probably another bank or insurance company that invests in buying loans, wants to first verify the contractual terms of the loan that they're buying. Verifying the original loan amount, what the remaining balance is, what the monthly payment, the interest rate, and the terms of repayment are. The reduction certificate is the document where they want the lender who wrote you that loan, who's trying to sell that loan now, to verify all that same information. Reduction certificates are also used when a property is being sold to get a payoff statement for the closing agent to pay off the loan from the proceeds of the sale. Because they're still verifying the terms of the loan. So the note is a negotiable instrument that may be sold by the lender. They basically assign the mortgage to someone else. The satisfaction of lien is filed by the lender in the public records once your debt's paid off, as required by the defeasance clause when you defeated that baby. Loans are recorded in the public records where in the county where the property records are kept. So they attach them to the ownership documents in the public record in the county hall of records. By recording the documents in the public records, establishing that priority of the lien. What determines the priority of liens? The date they're recorded in a public record, which determines who gets paid back first in the lien repayment order. Who gets paid back first in the lien repayment order? Who gets paid back first in the lien repayment order? What lien gets paid back first?
Taxes?
Taxes. Two things certain in life, death and taxes. Taxes jump even ahead of a first mortgage loan. Correct. And then all the other loans, like the first or second loans or any other liens, they get paid back according to the date that they were recorded in the public record. All right, so usury is charging an illegally high rate of interest. Usury is charging an illegally high rate of interest. The purpose of usury laws are to prevent loan sharking, where people charge unreasonably high rates of interest to lend you money. You know, like the mob. They would lend you money if you didn't pay it back. They'd charge you 100% interest, and if you didn't pay it back, they'd break a leg or two. You know, so usury laws are there to prevent this kinds of practices, that loan sharking. So, what is considered okay? I mean, usury says it's there to prevent charging an unreasonably high rate of interest. Well, what is considered reasonable, acceptable? Well, sellers can charge no more than 16% interest on their first mortgage, but they could charge as much as 30% when they're selling their own primary residence and they're offering seller financing. And that's still not considered usury. Wow. 30%, imagine that. That's a lot. So usury laws only apply to private lenders. So basically, if the seller is offering seller financing, usury laws only apply to them. Usury laws do not apply to any lender that is any way, shape, or form related to the federal government or doing business with the federal government, is insured by the federal government, or plans on selling the loan to any lending institution that is related to the federal government or doing business or insured by them. So they don't need to follow usury laws. So I guess they could charge even more than 30% interest. Yikes. I got a little cartoon here for you to watch. It's from a documentary that this economist put together. And it's about a 46, 47-minute movie that's all like cartoonish style, that it simplifies how lending works in the world and here in the United States by using a fictitious story. But it's here's a section from that, just a little snippet from it about usury. This is, by the way, an excellent documentary that this guy put together, and he's some kind of world economist. The guy did an excellent job. It's called Money is Debt. This is an excellent movie. I think every kid should watch it before they graduate high school. it's a really good documentary. So let's check this one out here.
One time, charging any interest on a loan was called usury and was subject to severe penalties, including death. Every major religion forbade usury. Most of the arguments made against the practice were moral. It was held that money's only legitimate purpose was to facilitate the exchange of real goods and services. Only
So you guys hearing that fine, or do I need to let me put it through the computer's audio just in case.
Form of making money from simply having money was regarded as the act of a parasite or of a thief.
So did you guys hear that? Were you guys able to hear that audio at the beginning before I adjusted it?
Yes.
Okay. So usually they said that, in the past, just about every religion made usury illegal. It was thought that it was the act of a parasite or a thief because money cannot make money. You hear that statement all the time, work smarter, not harder, let your money work for you. That's the banks telling you this all the time. Every religion on the planet were always said, well, that's the act of a parasite or a thief because money doesn't work, people do. And so you must be taking advantage of somebody. So usury in the past was punishable by death. That's what he was explaining there. And even today, some religions find charging interest, it's against their religion. I had one guy in my class. He was like, "Yeah, usury's against my religion," and I started laughing. I was like, "Yeah, mine too. You and me both, buddy." I was like, "I don't like paying it either." And he's like, "No, no, 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 no. It's against my religion. I don't pay interest." I believe he was Muslim. But still today, devout Jews and Muslims, they don't pay interest. Some of the other religions, they realize that to facilitate transactions these days, it's now more acceptable. They relaxed on that a little bit, that you can now pay the interest. But how do the Jews and Muslims work if they don't? It's against their religion to pay interest. How do they borrow money? How do they get a loan to buy anything? Well, I guess I wonder how they deal with credit cards. Because I understand how they do it with cars and houses, but what if they need a credit card? Do they not buy anything online? How exactly does that work? Or they only deal with debit cards. So with buying real estate, they have to get a loan. It's something called a shared equity mortgage. This type of loan, they become partners in the ownership of the real estate they're buying with the investor that's lending them the money. Now, they do have to pay back that loan, but it's at a 0% interest rate. But they do have to pay back that loan, and with the agreement that when they sell the property, hopefully at a profit, they're going to share that profits with the partner that lent them the money. That's how that works. And that partner could be a private investor, could be a bank, could be the religious organization itself that's lending the money. So check this out. Usury is charging an illegally high rate of interest, and it only applies to private lenders. But do you know that if a private lender does not charge a high enough interest rate, that the IRS can step in and impute their own interest rate at a higher rate so that they could tax it accordingly and get their fair share? Another reason to get rid of that useless agency, right? The IRS. Jeez. You don't if you want to lend your own money to somebody, you want to finance somebody purchasing your house. If you don't charge them a high enough interest rate, the IRS steps in and will impute a higher interest rate and tax it so that they can get a piece of the action. How about that? Talk about crime syndicate, huh? So look at this. And they don't even go after rich people because this only applies to transactions that are $2.8 million or less. So the IRS says the lender must charge at least 9% interest or an amount equal to the applicable federal rate, the AFR, whichever is lower. Currently, the AFR is still lower because you could go out there and get loans right now. And what is it? It's about 5% right now on the interest rates. So I don't know. When I got started in real estate, people would kill if they could get a 6% interest rate. And back when my parents bought their house, geez, interest rates were between 17 and 20 something percent. You know, you guys don't realize how good it's been for many, many years now, with these super low interest rates. Now, those 3%, 4%, you're probably never going to see them again in your lifetime. Once we get past all this government intrusion in manipulating the markets right now. So no prepayment penalties are allowed in New Jersey. That's going to be an exam question, I'm sure. So if you pay off your loan sooner than the anticipated payoff date, a prepayment penalty would be charged. That's what a prepayment penalty is. In New Jersey, institutional lenders are not allowed to charge prepayment penalties. They're not allowed. Just study that and know that for exam. No prepayment penalties allowed in New Jersey. Although technically it says that's only for institutional lenders. So private lenders, if it's a commercial loan, they actually can charge prepayment penalties. All right. So that would be like if you got a second loan on your house, those are usually private commercial loans. Or if you're getting a loan to buy a very expensive house, those don't fall in line with normal lending guidelines. Those could be possibly charged prepayment penalties. For commercial properties, those ones could be charged prepayment penalties. But those from institutional lenders, no prepayment penalties allowed in New Jersey, and that's the one they're going to be asking you the questions on exam. All right, so mortgage loans get paid back in the event of foreclosure based on their priority. So the priority is based on the date that they were recorded in a public record. Home equity loans are often a form of second mortgage loan, where what is equity? Built-in value, right? You build up equity in three ways. You either pay down the debt, you use inflation as a hedge as real estate values go up and down and fluctuate, or you force it to build equity by doing improvements on the property, thereby increasing the value, building equity. So if you take out a loan against the equity you have built in the property, you're just basically draining out what you paid off or the built-in value. Equity is that difference between what you owe on the property and what it's worth. So a subordination agreement. What is a subordination agreement? Well, what's a subordinate? Let's examine it this way. What's a subordinate? If you're working for somebody, you are their subordinate, right? It's something that's under something else. A sub, like a submarine, under the water, marine, the water. Sub is something that's under. So a subordination agreement, when talking about loans, is when a primary lien holder signs a document that allows another subordinate lien holder to jump ahead of them. So they're agreeing to drop back in the lien repayment order. Why would any lender want to do that when they fought so hard to secure the first lien position so that in the event of foreclosure, they get paid back first? Well, because that second loan could be a home improvement loan. It's much smaller than the initial loan that's used to buy the real estate. So if they did allow them to jump ahead of them, well, this loan is only improving the value anyway, because it's meant to do improvements on the property. And it's a much smaller loan. So even if they have to foreclose and get paid back, it's not going to completely wipe out the interest of that current first lien holder. Make sense? So that's basically what all this says here. So subordinate, let's highlight subordination agreement. The holder of the first mortgage would drop back in priority. Okay. Home improvement loans are common to have these. All right, so when all the mortgage loan payments have been made and the note is paid in full, the mortgagee, that's the lender, is usually required to execute that release or satisfaction of mortgage, as the lender is required to do per the defeasance clause when you've defeated the loan, right? Now, the reduction certificate does the same thing as the estoppel certificate that verifies all the terms of that loan, but it's signed by the lender. And reduction certificates are often used when they need a payoff statement on the property as well. Okay. So I got those notes over here about the difference between an estoppel and a reduction certificate. All right, so here's one slide where I put the note for what a satisfaction of mortgage lien is, assuming a loan, and something called the alienation clause, which we're going to highlight in a moment. Alienation clause is also known as the resale or due on sale clause in the note. It states that upon the transfer of ownership, the loan must be repaid in full. So the purpose of this is to prevent the loan from being assumed or taken over by a new owner, especially if it's at a lower interest rate. Because banks want them to go out and get a new loan, pay those origination fees, and pay higher interest, because that's how banks make money. What is interest? It is the rent you pay for the privilege of using someone else's money. You're renting their money. Think of it that way. So there is a fee you need to pay when borrowing someone's money and using someone else's money. Just like when you're using someone else's house, you pay rent. When you're using someone else's money, you got to pay rent on it. That's the fee. Otherwise, what's the juice when somebody is lending you their money? What's in it for them, right? You pay rent. That rent is called interest. Interest is calculated on an annual basis if we were to look at the math of it, which we will I don't think in this chapter, in the next chapter. So the alienation clause prevents a loan from being taken over by someone else, especially if it's at a lower interest rate. So loans, now think about this for a second now. So alienation clause is also known as the resale, because when you sell the property, you got to pay off the loan in full. You got to pay it back. And then that new person will have a loan when they buy it, right? So that's why it's also called the due on sale clause, because your loan becomes due upon the sale of your property. You transfer the ownership, it must be paid back in full. So think about this for a second. If your note does not have an alienation clause in it, do you need to pay it back in full when you transfer ownership? No. You could just continue making payments. As long as you continue making payments on the loan, then it's not an issue. Huh. So that's how you could maybe offer seller financing even if you didn't pay off your loan yet. As long as you charge more interest rate than you're paying your lender, you could offer a loan to somebody else, seller financing, that's maybe a point above what you're paying. All right, so this could be beneficial if the loan's at a lower interest rate than currently available to those who are getting new loans in the current market, and the new owner wouldn't have to qualify for a loan. They wouldn't have to pay for origination fees or new appraisal fees or any of that. However, most newer assumable loans that are out there require the new owner still to qualify and apply for the loan to be approved, even though they don't have to pay all those appraisal and registration fees and all that stuff again. They still need to be qualified, so they need to provide their bank statements and pay stubs and all that, just to make sure that these people can afford it. Okay. Now, most FHA loans are assumable. VA loans are assumable. VA loans are for veterans. However, in order to get a VA loan, you need to be a veteran. In order to assume a VA loan, you do not. I think that's an exam question too, but we'll go over that one in chapter 14, I think. All right, so let's highlight and write these notes for alienation clause. Going to be a hot one today. It's supposed to be in the 90s. All right. So what's foreclosure? When a borrower defaults in any of the obligations of the mortgage, this may result in foreclosure. The lender typically gives the borrower 30 days to cure any defaults. Then a lis pendens is recorded in the public record as a public notice of possible future legal action, which is foreclosure against the property. Foreclosure is that legal process of a lien holder, the lender, taking ownership of a property through court action, which has been pledged as collateral for the loan. The first step of starting foreclosure is then enacting the acceleration clause, calling the entire debt due and owing immediately. The lender may ask the court to order a foreclosure sale, also known as a auction or sheriff's sale. Before a sheriff's sale can take place, all interested parties, including the renters, need to be made aware that the foreclosure is in process. Now, this sometimes creates a problem for an owner who's trying to get caught up on their payments to avoid the foreclosure. If those tenants decide that they're going to stop paying their rent, which a lot of times they do, they're like, well, if his mortgage and he's paying his bills, why should I be paying mine? Right? And when people start doing that, that's pretty much the last nail in the coffin for that homeowner to have a chance of trying to keep and save their home. So that's why at this point, if I'm involved, I would tell that homeowner to start eviction proceedings immediately on that tenant. You want to destroy their credit if at all possible. If they're trying to screw you out of your home, you want to do that because that may also light a fire under their butts to get in gear and let them know you got to still pay your bills. You're living in someone else's house. You don't get to live in it rent free because you think they got financial hardships. So you're going to take advantage of that and try to make it worse. Screw you. I always advise the property owner, start eviction. You want that reported on their background check. So if a future landlord does a credit check on them for the next place they're going to rent, they're going to see that they weren't paying the rent. They had to get evicted. So if those tenants stop paying the rent, so the owner should take immediate action to evict such tenants who create these problems. Then a sheriff's sale needs to be advertised in the local newspapers for 4 weeks and a paper in Trenton. So that sheriff's sale, the auction, it may be delayed 2 times by the borrower for 2 weeks each time, and 2 times by the lender for 2 weeks each time. Now, why would the lender want to delay their foreclosure? Well, they're giving the owner time to get caught up and pay back what they owe. Right? The lender just wants their money. So they're willing to work with you a little bit. So what is this? 2 times by the borrower for 2 weeks, 2 times by the lender for 2 weeks. That's for a grand total of how much? 2 months. What's your average sale take? About 2 months, 60 days, right, to close. So this gives you the opportunity that even after a foreclosure has been started, we could still try to save a homeowner from foreclosure, get their home on the market, get some offers really quick, especially if the foreclosure process, they haven't been notified of a sheriff's sale yet, a scheduled date for a sheriff's sale. This gives us a little bit of an opportunity to put the property on the market, price it aggressively, get some offers, and then maybe we could sell the property and avoid the foreclosure altogether. And then even if we do that, and at some point they notified the owner that they scheduled a foreclosure, and then the foreclosure auction actually takes place, well, we could still keep moving forward with this trying to sell the property because the bidder has to pay cash, at least 20% at the auction. And then the balance has to be paid within 10 days. So even after a sheriff's auction took place, we still have 10 more days to close on a transaction, and this would undo the whole sheriff's sale. As long as we're able to close on the transaction within that 10 days after the auction and pay off any debts to the lien holders, we're able to basically undo the whole foreclosure process. And the sheriff's department would pay back any money that bidders at auctions may have bid, but they don't get the property. So after that 10 days, the sheriff's department will give a bargain and sale deed. They call it a sheriff's deed here, but there's no such thing as a sheriff's deed. It's actually a bargain and sale deed that just says sheriff's deed on top. Okay, but technically there's nothing called a sheriff's deed. Sheriff's deed is what we refer to as a bargain and sale deed. We didn't learn about the different types of deeds yet. And this is delivered to the successful bidder. The mortgager still can repay all outstanding fees and redeem the property before that 10 days when the sheriff's deed is delivered. But after that point, there's no further right of redemption that exists here in New Jersey. Once that deed is delivered to the bidder after the auction within that 10 days, there's no right of redemption for the homeowner at that point. Foreclosure sticks. So let's highlight a little bit about that sheriff's deed here. We're just going to highlight this, and we're going to write a bargain and sale deed says sheriff's deed on top, because technically there's nothing called a sheriff's deed. It's actually a bargain and sale. Boom, 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 boom.
I got it.
Okay. Everybody else good?
Yep.
A deed in lieu. Ooh. A deed in lieu of foreclosure. Instead of. So a deed instead of foreclosure is an alternative to foreclosure where the lender asks the borrower if they could just sign the deed back over to the lender. It would avoid the whole entire court process of foreclosure. Sometimes lenders will tell a borrower that they're willing to accept a deed in lieu of foreclosure. They could just sign the ownership back over to the lender and then get out of the house. Okay. Um, this is no guarantee that the lender is not going to chase after the borrower for any deficiencies if they manage to resell that property in 90 days after taking possession of it. But the lender is also taking a risk here because there could be other liens on the property as well. So foreclosure would have wiped out those liens. But just signing the deed back over to them would not. So the lender is taking a bit of a risk there as well. But a deed in lieu of foreclosure is known as friendly foreclosure because it's by an agreement rather than a court action. So it doesn't negatively show up on your credit. A short sale is another alternative to foreclosure. That's when we, as the real estate agents, negotiate with the seller's lender to accept less than what is owed. Not a ridiculously low amount. Well, it depends. It's not going to be below market value, though. Okay, so a short sale is where we negotiate with the lender to accept a lower price than what is owed on the property. But it should be close to what the current market value is. Because if it's not, the lender's not going to lose a fortune. See, a lot of these wannabe investors think that they could go negotiate with a lender when somebody's doing a short sale and give them a ridiculously low offer on that. No, the lender's not going to accept the ridiculously low offer below market value. The owner owes $300,000 on a house. The house is now valued at $200,000. You can't get a borrower that's going to come in and say, "Well, I'll give you $100,000." You know, it doesn't work like that. It's not worth it for the lender. They're better off just foreclosing and then selling the property themselves. They'd make more money, right? For the lender, it's about the quickest way they could recoup their money, but the quickest way they could recoup the most money. So they're willing to take a little bit of a hit, but not a ridiculously low hit. Okay. So right now, we're not really in a short sale type market, but we will be again. These markets are cyclical, they happen. You know, especially with the ridiculously high prices of real estate right now, it's bound to happen again. That we're going to hit a bunch of these short sales, and then you just need to adapt. Short sales are not hard, they're just tiresome. There's a lot of paperwork and repetition. You got to keep calling lenders and refaxing and faxing and refaxing documents that they said they didn't get. You got to do record keeping of when you sent it, where you sent it, how you sent it, who you spoke to. Otherwise, sometimes dealing with lenders, they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, we closed out that short sale transaction. We haven't heard from you." And yeah, but you said don't contact us until we get back to you, you know, and well, we didn't hear from you, so we closed out the short sale. What are you talking about? This document that we requested. Yes, I did. I sent it to you and I confirmed it on this date. I called up, I spoke to Sheila. Sheila said that they'd get back to us, but they never did. And now I'm following up because we haven't heard from you in a while. You're saying that's closed out. And they're like, okay, let's check the records. And you hear the tick, 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 tick on the keyboard. And they're like, oh, okay, we see that in the records now. Okay, we'll reactivate the short sale. That's the way it is dealing with lenders. It's a pain in the ass. But you know what? They allow you they allow up to 6% of commission that they would pay you. And you know, you don't have to worry about negotiating with a seller. You know, this is what a short sale is. You owe more money on the house than it's currently worth. So I go up to you, Mrs. Seller. I'm gonna do I'm trying to get your listing, okay? Okay, I see you're behind on your mortgage payments. You're in danger of foreclosure. What if I were to tell you, because you put your head in the sand already at this point, and you're not returning calls of the lenders. You're getting letters from attorneys and the courts and stuff wanting to foreclose on you. And I step in and I say, hey, what if I were to tell you that I could put your house on the market and sell it for whatever the current market value is, despite it being less than what you owe on it. And I can negotiate with your bank to accept that. Would you find that of value? Would that be something of value to you, Mr. Mrs. Homeowner? Would you find that of value? Guys, you're pretending we're doing role playing. You're supposed to be pretending to be the Mr. Mrs. Seller. Would you find that of value? Nod your heads or say something. Come on.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Right? Now, what you that I can also negotiate with your lender to get them to pay my commission. Would you find that of value?
Yes.
Yes.
Try to renegotiate what I charge you for commission. I'm going to charge 6%, and I'm going to be worth every penny of it. Now, what if I told you that I could also negotiate with your lender to get them to pay your attorney fee, because you're going to need an attorney to do this transaction? Would you find that of value?
Yes.
Now, what if I were to also tell you that depending on where the funds came from when your loan was originated, that I may be able to negotiate with your lender to give you several $1,000s to work with them to do the short sale and then get the hell out when appropriate? Would you find that of value? And I just tell them I could do all that. You know, these are not false promises. These are all things that I can do for you.
What about situation? Can you consider that a value? If you say, you know, that the kitchen that kind of you don't like, and I have a guy who could give you the best price in the market, will that be a value?
They couldn't afford to make their mortgage payment. So what makes you think that they're going to be wanting to buy your construction services to remodel their kitchen that the house they're going to lose?
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
So they probably would not find that of value. Yeah, they're just trying to get out of losing their house totally. You know, I'm telling them, hey, listen, at this point, if you can't pay to get caught up on your mortgage, instead of getting foreclosed on, I can help prevent you get foreclosed on by helping you sell your home when you didn't think it was possible because you owe more on your loan than the house is currently worth. So you didn't think that there's a way that you could possibly sell that house, pay back the lender, and get out of it. So I'm giving you solutions, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. Okay, that's what this is all about. Hey, instead of just losing the house to foreclosure, I'm helping you avoid that foreclosure on your credit report by doing a short sale. Does it impact your credit report? Does it impact your credit? Sure. It'll slightly negatively impact it, but probably not as much as all those missed payments that you already failed to make. From this point, it starts to look good on your credit report. It'll have a little bit of a negative impact because it'll show paid, settled, less than full amount owed. But guess what? It is settled. It is paid. So now your credit can go in the direction as long as you pay all your other bills on time, because they look at that as a good thing when you negotiate with your lenders and you come to amicable solutions, and that's what a short sale does. So it does help people's credit. But anyway, that's what a short sale is. A deficiency judgment is when you sell the property and you didn't get enough money to pay back what was owed. Okay. If you only have one loan, you do a short sale, they agree to call it a day, whatever you were able to get for them. When you have multiple lenders, because you have maybe 2 or even 3 loans on your house, those second and third lenders, they could possibly get a deficiency judgment against you and still chase after you for that deficiency. So me, if I'm doing a short sale for you, I'm going to negotiate with them as well to try to accept a lower amount. So in the past, we'd offer them $1,000 and tell them to go away. If you don't, then they're just going to go through with allow the foreclosure to happen. And it's going to wipe out your interest, and you don't get squat. Nowadays, the way the laws have changed and stuff, and what lenders have learned is in their best interest. The first lender we can negotiate with, they'll usually offer a second lien holder up to 10% of what was owed to them for them to settle. But if you start having third and fourth lien holders, they're like, okay, well, we'll offer a certain amount that they could all split amongst each other. But if you can't negotiate with them all to accept that, then we're just going to foreclose. So anyway, what is a deficiency judgment? It's when you pay back somebody, but you didn't pay them back everything. So that person you owed money to can go get a judgment from a court. What is a judgment? It's a decree from a court where a judge says you owe this person money. Yeah, because you owed them money, you didn't pay it all back, so they get a judgment awarding them that money. Now, if they notice you got any assets, they can put liens on those assets, so they can collect them. And then REO stands for real estate owned. It is a bank-owned property with no debts on it. So lender probably foreclosed on a property, and now they're in possession of the property, and there's no outstanding liens or debts owed on. It's called an REO. So, come on. Slide's not changing. Whoop. Yeah, right there. Okay. So here's where we make the notes where we highlight deed in use and real estate owned. Everybody good? Everybody got the highlights? Remember, try to let me know if you guys got it, say I got it, so that I could then just ask really quick at that point if anybody else still needs a minute, and then we can move on. Otherwise,
I got it.
I got it.
it takes a lot of time, okay? All right, so I told you at the beginning of this chapter, we learned that there are two parts to a mortgage. The mortgage itself, which is the promise to pay, and the note, which is the financing instrument. And the note makes you personally liable for the full amount owed, even in the event of foreclosure. So the note is the evidence, the proof that you owe money. You sign that document at the closing table. No digital signatures for loans to originate the purchase of real estate. You could use digital signatures for refinancing, but not for loans to acquire and buy real estate. That needs your wet signature with a pen still. And if the lender cannot produce that note, that original document that you signed at the time that you got the loan, where you're at the closing table when you were buying the house, they have no proof that you owe money, so they can't really collect the debt, so they can't really foreclose on you. However, they will try to. Banks will still go through the process because they know that borrowers know that they owe the money and they're just not paying it. So when they're doing the foreclosure, they often don't even open up the mail, let alone go to the courthouse and show up to the foreclosure hearings. However, if you do know the law, you do know these rules, and you do follow them, you could use them to your advantage. By using these three little words, you can prevent the lender from foreclosing on you by saying, produce the note.
All right, joining today by Peter Murphy and Terry Smiljanich. Tell us why ConsumerWarningNetwork.com got some national play this past week with an idea to helping people in foreclosures, and that is what?
That is called Produce the Note.
Is it like Show Me the Money?
Yeah, Show Me the Money, exactly. It's on our website, and it's received a lot of national attention. AP, CNN, ABC, a lot of different entities. And what it is, it's an attempt to provide some help to people that are in foreclosure,
okay,
and who are just simply trying to slow things down so that maybe they can work with the bank a little more, because the bank's not returning their calls, is not willing to work with them. They hear about these Obama plans and other plans, and they'd like to participate in them. But meanwhile, the sheriff's knocking on the door, and they're going to be foreclosed next week. Well, what we talk about on our website is the idea of a simple request to the lender who's suing you. It's saying, let me see the note. You say, I owe you this money, and it's based on a note, a mortgage. Let me see the original note, not a copy of it. Let me see the original, because whoever holds that original is the one that has the right, to enforce the debt.
Well, I thought these things had been sliced and diced and chopped up and bundled and sent off to wherever.
The problem is
right?
There's still an original note somewhere. But it's been chopped up and diced and sold and resold and resold. And what it forces the mortgage lender to do is say, ooh, where is the note? And they have to go find it. And maybe sometimes they can't find it. They can still go to court and say, well, we can't find the note, but here's the proof that we have that we're the appropriate. So it's not a way to help like deadbeats or something, to just stay in a home for free.
It's possible. It's not a way for that to happen. It's not what it's meant to do for deadbeats to stay in, but they can. And it is possible, because if the lender cannot prove that you owe the money, he's saying, well, they could establish through evidence. Well, what's the evidence? The evidence is the note itself. If they can't establish it with the court, then they can't go collecting after you. And it could, you could have these multiple court dates, and after a while you'd be like, hey, Your Honor, we've been here multiple times already. They can't prove that I owe this money. I'm not admitting that I owe it money. I don't have to incriminate myself in court. It's up to them. They're the ones suing me with the foreclosure suit. If they can't prove that they owe the money, come on, we're here in court now at the third, fourth time. Could you discharge this? And if that's the case, well, then there you go, and you don't need to pay back your loan. Now, that is rare because most people will never do that or even attempt to do that. Hell, most people don't even go to the court. The people who have used this strategy have just used it to buy more time to try to renegotiate or try to sell their property to avoid that foreclosure. It's a good way to buy time. Okay. Let's finish this up.
Victor, I have a friend in
Yeah.
it's in New York.
Uh-huh.
She somehow stayed in the house for I think over 10 years because the note would belong to the husband and they divorced, and the bank, I don't know, haven't kicked her out for so many years, and then they started doing it, and then she's prolonged it by being like delaying things. So like she stayed literally for 10 years, save up all the money to buy a house after that.
Yeah, I mean, during the whole meltdown thing, there were a lot of times that the banks were not even pursuing foreclosure. So there was people that weren't making mortgage payments on their own houses, and they were living there for years on end. I think the longest one that I had was 6 years, personally.
Yeah.
But before he finally came to me to try to sell the house. But yeah, I'm going to show you a couple examples, and then I'm going to show you the longest foreclosure in history. Okay, it was a lady in Florida, and she managed to delay foreclosure for 25 years because she law. But let's let these guys finish. I got a couple of these videos to show you.
If they find the note, you're still going to be foreclosed on,
You're still
right?
going to be foreclosed on.
So-
But if it buys you an extra 8 months, where you can work with the bank and try to modify, and maybe also people that have adopted the strategy, what we've seen often is that because they've taken that approach, suddenly the lender has gotten a lot more interested in returning their phone calls and working with
it
them.
gets them actually
Gets them-
in dialogue with
The squeaky,
right.
the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and so they get a little more attention from the bank, and they're willing to maybe work with them. So it's not a magic bullet of any kind, but it is an approach that people who are in those kind of desperate straits where they're about to have their property sold out from underneath their feet, to buy some time to see if they can work something out.
And you've seen it work for people.
Oh, we've seen it work for people, and there's lawyers in other states that have told us they've adopted the strategy, and they found that courts are very receptive to it.
Show me the note.
Show me the note.
That's fascinating.
Right.
All right.
Hello, I'm Angie Moreski. The important question now is how can you use the Produce the Note strategy to help you save your home? Attorney John Yanchunas is joining us today to help give you some tips on how to proceed. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, first question here, is this something that anybody facing foreclosure can use?
Everybody should use it. Everybody should put the lender to the task of establishing that it owns the debt that it claims that you owe to it.
Now, is there a good indicator? I noticed as I've looked through some of the mortgage foreclosure complaints that the lenders file with the court, some of them actually have these counts in them that say reestablishment of note, and then the wording is actually the mortgage note has either been lost or destroyed, and the plaintiff is unable to state the manner in which this has occurred. They're admitting that they lost or destroyed the note.
Well, obviously that's the best sign available that the lender doesn't have the note mortgage any longer.
So if you see that, or if you want to just try Produce the Note strategy, what's the first thing you should do?
Request through discovery that instrument be produced to you. Once that's served on the lawyer representing the plaintiff's lawyer has got to respond within 30 days with the document requested. If it does not, then the consumer needs to go to court and ask the court to compel the plaintiff to produce that document.
So literally a letter or a document that you send to the court, and we'll have a template on the website to help people through that process. And why is that so important to prove what?
Well, it's important to prove that the lending institution that is suing you on the note or to foreclose your home is in fact the owner of the debt. The lending institution which originated the note and mortgage, the debt, may no longer be the owner. It may have transferred it to another institution, which in turn may have transferred it to another lending institution.
In other words, he's saying the bank sold your loan to someone else, and then that lender eventually sold it to someone else. That lender sold it to someone else. This happens all the time. They package up, especially with non-performing loans, they package them up with enough good performing loans to sell them and get them off their books. They call that mortgage-backed securities. And now, where are the original documents for the lender? Whose warehouse are they in? What books are they in? Can they even locate them? And that becomes a problem if they can't.
And so on and so forth.
And you should also be careful looking at the fees and penalties that they're rolling into this request. Is that right?
That can be collected, like property inspection fees, late charges. But so frequently, we found that some lending institutions collect sums of money which are simply made up. They're, I think, designed to increase the lender's bottom line. For instance, a foreclosure fee, a pre-bankruptcy fee.
So keep an eye on all those fees which may be unfair and unwarranted.
Absolutely. In fact, you should ask the lender for proof that that sum of money was paid.
Obviously, if you're behind in your mortgage, this is not a way to just get your house for free. What are we trying to do here?
Well, it gives the consumer leverage, or buys the consumer time to work out with that lending institution a repayment plan of the arrearage or the default.
Do you think judges will be receptive to this?
Oh, absolutely. I've tried it many times. I've done it for many years. Judges expect lawyers and parties who come before them to adhere to the letter of the law.
So if I'm the homeowner and I end up before a judge, what do I say? What's my plea?
Well, what I want is the lender to produce the original note and mortgage. If they cannot, then put them to the task of establishing why they can't, and that they are in fact the owner of the note and mortgage. And of course, more importantly, or just as important, that every element of the debt that the lender claims that the consumer owes is in fact owed.
And the ultimate goal here is perhaps to get the lenders to be more receptive to negotiating fair terms so that a homeowner can actually stay in that home and keep their home.
Absolutely. The whole concept of equity, which is the principle which allows mortgages to be foreclosed, is a concept of fairness. And one of the most important principles in equity is equity abhors a forfeiture. That means that property that secures an obligation should not be forfeited unless the letter of the law has been followed.
It's a pretty big thing to lose your home, so you should fight for it.
It's the most important asset that any consumer will ever have.
Okay, John, thank you very much. We appreciate your time here today.
Thank you.
Pretty interesting stuff, huh? Here's one where a lady actually tries it, and you could see her. This is the first time that it's getting done in, I believe this one's in California, where a lady's actually putting this into place and trying this out.
With so many people losing their homes, this report from 7 on Your Side can help. You could be able to freeze a foreclosure by saying 3 simple words. Michael Finney is here tonight with what they are, and Michael, why they might work for you.
Yeah, the idea is really pretty simple. The homeowner saying to the lender, produce the note. Now, that's legal shorthand for prove I owe you the money. American mortgages have been sliced and diced, bundled into complex financial vehicles, then sold around the world.
I think the note has been sold on so many times, and they've become very sloppy with their paperwork. It could be on a dumpster somewhere, for all I know.
And for all the banking and financial managers know, too. And that's becoming a safety net for homeowners. If the loan servicer can't prove they're collecting the money legally, the homeowner is off the hook, at least temporarily.
We've never seen a company produce the original note yet.
Attorney Chris Hoyer set up.
He said, now he's with here's another attorney with that same consumerwarningnetwork.com, although that website's no longer up anymore, just so that you guys know, so don't bother going there. Yeah, they were doing this during that whole mortgage meltdown thing of since 2006. But he just said that they never had a lender actually show up to court and produce the note. So I guess that does make them a little receptive to what you have to say. And now the homeowner has a little bit more leverage that they have in order to negotiate with that bank or to give them more time.
This website offering consumers advice and paperwork to pursue a produce the note strategy. In Florida, the strategy is forcing lenders to stop proceedings, buying homeowners precious time.
$100 going twice.
But it has apparently never been tried here in California. Till now.
They saved our house. She's the one that works day and night, day and night, day and night on this house. See, we don't understand none of this. She's the one that did it.
That's Isabel and Richard Caparelli. This is their home, and attempting to save it, Deborah Caparelli, their daughter-in-law. A different Florida attorney helped her by email.
First, he said, have your bankruptcy attorney file an amended schedule listing this property as unsecured. Okay? Unsecured means that Saxon, the servicer, would have to stand up and say, it's secured, we have the note.
The Caparelli's attorney, Mark Voisnat, did that, allowing him to then say, produce the note. And today, the Caparellis went back to court, hoping to be the first in a long line of homeowners successfully using the produce the note strategy in California.
The judge gave us more time, and it seemed that they can't find the note yet. So we got hopes, lots of hopes.
Nothing was decided today, but the note has still not been produced.
They claim they have it, but I have no proof that they have this note. And so you would think by now, it's been almost 3 months, they would have pulled out a copy if they had it.
A recent study has found those documents are being lost an astounding 40% of the time. Now, even without the note, the banks can eventually collect if they can prove they have the legal right to a note and they can have another one issued. But that takes time, and for many in foreclosure, time is needed to straighten out their financial situations.
Well, produce the note.
Produce
3 words.
It
Could save you some time.
Yep.
Thanks, Michael, very much. With so
Here's that foreclosure from hell I spoke to you about. This lady, what is her name? Used the produce the note strategy along with many others that managed to delay foreclosure for 25 years, the longest known foreclosure in history. She knew her rights, what disclosures lenders are required to provide, and when, along with a host of other info and tactics to use successfully against the lenders who tried to foreclose on her. So I got this from an article called "The Foreclosure from Hell," and I got it from a couple of sources. The 25-year foreclosure from hell. Banks now fear Patsy Campbell, who hasn't made a mortgage payment since 1985. An estimated an investment group finally foreclosed on her in 2010. As of 2022. I looked it up and I found out she was still alive at the age of 84. Here was that house. That's Patsy. So she retired. She was a retired insurance salesperson. She fought foreclosure for 25 years against taking her home in Florida. So she's been living in her house in a 2-story on a half-acre in a tidy middle-class neighborhood in Central Florida since 1978. The last time she made a mortgage payment was October 1985. Her foreclosure case outlasted 6 lenders. 7 great-grandchildren were born. Miss Campbell had been able to keep her house protected by a 105-pound pit bull named Dodger, and a locked rusty gate advising visitors to beware of the dog. She challenged her foreclosure on the grounds of her mortgage was improperly transferred between lenders and federal agencies. The lawyers for the bank had waited too long to prosecute the case if there was deadlines that they needed to meet. That a Florida law shields her from all creditors, and for frozen and for dozens of other reasons. She's met every attempt by a lender to repossess her home with multiple appeals and counteractions. She basically buried them in paperwork. According to the Wall Street Journal attorney Robert Summers, who represents the current owner of her mortgage, they call it every lender's worst nightmare. Yep. Eventually, they were able to foreclose on her. But it took a very long time because she knew the law. How about this one? This one's pretty screwed up. I'm showing this one because New Jersey has very similar laws. And this is a possible, I never heard of this, but this is very possible that this could happen. Now, you tell me that this is not crooked as hell. This woman was foreclosed on by her condominium's HOA, which then turned around and bought her house at auction for $3.25. And then they sold it for $1 to the attorney who did the foreclosure, and they split the profits. And let me see if I actually got it on the slide first. I may have it on the, yeah, nope. Okay. Let's take a look at this.
Okay, here's me calling.
When Patricia Quigley calls her HOA's property management company, she gets this message.
The number you dialed is not a working number.
But call from any other phone number.
Thank you for calling Access Management Group.
You're blocked.
9 a.m.
In 2010, Quigley, upset with her HOA's billing process, decided to take a stand and refused to pay her dues, about $700 that year. But that only led to letters from Lozeka and Johansson, the law firm hired to collect on the debt. And that debt had grown.
Walked in, paid him the $2,700, and when I walked out, I said, "This is all I owe, right?" Yes.
But it wasn't all you owed.
No.
Shortly after, she received another bill for $3,000. She called and sent letters trying to figure out why. But all Quigley says she got in return were cryptic statements, dates with amounts that didn't make any sense to her.
Then here comes the next set of letters. And now it's up to $6,400.
Turns out there were post-judgment legal fees and 18% back interest. So even after she'd paid more than $9,000, she was still somehow behind on her dues. But in 2018, she received the most shocking letter of all, an eviction notice.
You know, you lose your home. That's hard.
But sadness turned to anger when she realized the HOA had purchased her home through foreclosure for $3.24 a year before she was evicted. So you had been living in your house for a year, but you didn't legally own your house.
No.
Quigley says not only did the HOA accept her dues payment on a house she apparently did not own, but allowed her to make another $4,600 in home loan payments before getting kicked out. She paid a debt she did not owe.
Yes, that's for sure. And they don't have to give it back.
Attorney George Nowak has helped craft Georgia's HOA laws since the 1980s. He says Quigley's story is tragic, but it is a tragedy of her own making.
It doesn't happen
In a vacuum.
in a back room in blue smoke and mirrors.
Nowak says the HOA can't win a judgment until the homeowner owes at least $2,000. The court must perform a title search, have the foreclosure posted in the paper for a month, and the homeowner served.
They brought this on because they ignored all of the requests to pay. They didn't show up at the trial most times.
You want some more?
Quigley admits she never did go to court, not understanding the process or the stakes involved. But Phoenicia Law, a homeowner in Douglas County, did try to fight the HOA's claims against her.
When they garnished my bank account, I was unemployed.
Law owns a home in the Rosewood Community Association. She received a payment plan to catch up on her dues, but there were a few added fees she didn't understand.
I didn't know how it was stacking up. You
just knew it was a lot.
I knew it was a lot.
She disputed the bill in court, appealing to the judge for help.
These exhibits I sent to the court.
But court records say Law's dispute arrived one day too late. So the judge couldn't consider issues like this check, an HOA payment mailed in vain.
Clearly, returned to sender 7 times.
The kicker, after she lost the case, she was told to mail her settlement payment to that same address. And this time, the check didn't come back.
While it's portrayed as cold and you're taking advantage of the homeowner, it's the exact opposite. People who don't pay their assessments are having everybody else in the community subsidize them.
Georgia law fiercely protects an HOA's right to collect what is owed, but neither of these women deny their debt. What they do have a problem with is the inability to mediate and ask questions when a disagreement arises.
A lot of times, people can't afford to fight. They just have to walk away.
According to the Community Association Institute, 6 states have some type of ombudsman to help educate and facilitate these discussions.
This is what we went over in chapter 12. At the end of the chapter, I gave you this resource, CHI, the Community Associations Institute. They deal with condominiums and they teach you about management of them.
And several states require mediation before a lawsuit is filed. Georgia isn't one of them. After Quigley was evicted, the Reveal learned her HOA sold the house to an employee at the law firm involved in her foreclosure.
That really bothers me because how could that not be illegal?
According to public documents, Legacy Investment Properties, a company that didn't legally exist at the time, bought the house for $1 and a portion of the profits. The woman behind the LLC then reactivated her real estate license and sold the home to a new family.
I've never heard a story like that before.
While the HOA and law firm recouped their money and the LLC likely made some,
This cat's tougher than
Quigley ended up homeless, losing tens of thousands of dollars in equity.
The courts have said there is no legitimate reason for not paying. If you believe the association has done you wrong, then sue the association.
Pay it.
And sue the association.
How messed up is that?
Fedor Sanders says he's fine, waiting on the court.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up, huh? All right, let's go back to the slideshow. Have you guys ever heard about somebody foreclosing on a bank?
As a foreclosure defense attorney, this is sweet justice.
Only on Wink tonight, the tables are turned. Instead of Bank of America foreclosing on a home, a homeowner has deputies foreclose on the bank.
Bank of America filed foreclosure papers on a homeowner who didn't owe a dime. They paid for their house with cash.
Renee Stoll live at the Bank of America branch on Davis Boulevard in Naples with this story you'll see only on Wink tonight.
This is about a family who fought back and won. Their foreclosure nightmare started when they bought a house in the Golden Gate Estates owned by Bank of America. Like you said, they paid cash, so they never had a mortgage. Well, Bank of America fouled it up somewhere along the lines and actually tried to foreclose on the family. And what happened today, you're just going to have to see to believe. Movers, a truck, and an armed deputy, all while a nervous homeowner stands by and waits. This is normally what you'd see when a person's being foreclosed on and their property seized by a bank. But today, it's the other way around.
They've ignored our calls, ignored our letters. Legally, this is the next step to get my clients compensated.
A Collier County judge said Bank of America had to pay Maureen Nairges and her husband's legal fees after the bank tried to foreclose on their Golden Gate Estates property, but they paid cash. The courts agreed they never had a mortgage to begin with. After more than 5 months, the bank still hadn't paid up. So the homeowner's attorney did just what the bank would do to get their money, seize their assets.
I instructed the deputy to go in and take desks, computers, copiers, filing cabinets, including cash in the drawers.
Outside the bank, several deputies stood by with movers ready to start hauling out the bank's office supplies and furniture. Inside, the homeowner's attorney was locked out of the bank manager's office by deputies while the bank manager tried to figure out what to do.
He was visibly shaken. Having two sheriff's deputies sitting across your desk and a lawyer standing up behind them, demanding whatever assets are in the bank, it can be intimidating. But so is having your home foreclosed on when it wasn't right.
After about an hour, the bank finally cut a check.
As a foreclosure defense attorney, this is sweet justice because this is a symptom of a larger problem.
Now, the homeowner's attorney says that he sees mistakes all the time in foreclosure court where banks do not do their due diligence, and it winds up becoming a very lengthy process for the homeowners. He says he can only think of one other time where an attorney, the deputies, and a U-Haul came to a bank before ready to seize property. That was in Tampa. As far as Bank of America, they issued a statement saying that they apologize for the wait on the payment. They issued a notice to pay from the attorney that was working on the case on their side, but they didn't know the attorney went out of business. We'll be reporting live here in Naples. Renee Stoll, Wink News now.
The attorney went out of business. Likely story. But wow, you ever hear the bank getting folded on by the not even a borrower? They bought the house cash. All right. So that concludes chapter 13. Let's do the key terms to review. On page 264, lender. Who is known as the lender? What is the lender also known as?
Mortgagee.
11 is A, the mortgagee. Pledging of property as security without surrendering possession of that security. What is that called? The pledge of property as security without actually giving up that property. The opposite of what a pawn shop does. Sounds like
Hypothecation.
Hypothecation is correct. 9 is B. Written pledge of real estate as security for a loan.
Mortgage.
The mortgage. It's the promise to pay, the pledge. 10 is C. Property acquired by lenders. What do we call those properties that were acquired by lenders?
Real property.
And REO, real estate owned. 15 is D. Clause ensuring that after repayment, the lender has a claim on the property. What do we call that clause when you beat the loan? When you
Defeasance clause.
The defeasance clause. 5 is E. The borrower's statement of how much remains on the mortgage debt. What the interest rate was, what the original amount was, what your monthly payment is.
Reduction certificate. No.
Estoppel. The estoppel certificate. 7 is F. That's the one that's the borrower's statement, the one the borrower signs, is the estoppel. So 7 is F. A court order that the borrower pay money lost to the lender after foreclosure.
Deficiency judgment.
A deficiency judgment. 6 is G. What do we call the borrower? Who's the borrower?
Mortgage.
The mortgage is the borrower. Right. 12 is H. A clause stating that if the property is sold, the debt is immediately payable.
Alienation clause.
The alienation clause, also known as the due on sale clause in the note. 2 is I. Proceeding to auction foreclosed real estate. What do we call that proceeding? That auction is also referred to as
Sheriff sale.
a sheriff's sale. 18 is J. Charging higher interest than is allowed by law.
Usury.
Yes, and that will absolutely be on exams. That's one of the terms you'll absolutely see. Failure to live up to any part of a mortgage agreement.
Default.
You are now in default. 4 is L. The lender's statement that the debt has been repaid in full.
Satisfaction of mortgage.
The satisfaction of mortgage. 16 is M. Personal promise to repay money similar to a note.
Bond.
3 is N, the bonds. Lender's statement of how much remains on the debt. The lender's statement.
Reduction certificate.
Reduction certificate. 14 is O. Arrangement by which the mortgage holder gives up their priority. They agree to drop back in the lien repayment order.
Subordination agreement.
The subordination agreement. 19 is P. To seize and sell property pledged for a debt.
Foreclosure.
That's foreclosure. 8 is Q. Clause stating that in the case of default, the entire debt is owing and needs to be paid immediately.
Acceleration clause.
The acceleration clause, one is R. A document given to purchaser of foreclosed property.
Sheriff's deed.
The sheriff's deed, 17 is S. And personal promise to repay a loan, similar to a bond.
Note.
Is a note, 13 is T. And that concludes chapter 13.